The New York Mets have traded Freddy Peralta. He's going to the Tampa Bay Rays.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. And on today's show, we got our first big trade of, I guess, this soon-to-be deadline craziness. Obviously, AJ Minter was traded a little bit earlier, and way before that, we had the David Peterson trade. But this one is a major one. Freddy Peralta gets traded to the Tampa Bay Rays. And the Mets get 3 prospects in return. I want to take you through my whole thought process through how this all went down, because I initially get the report, right? The New York Mets have traded traded Freddy Peralta to the Tampa Bay Rays. And I got really excited because the ask, according to reports for the Mets, was a top 100 prospect plus. And so I'm dreaming about the top 100 prospect that's going to come back to the New York Mets. Now, I'm not delusional to think that the Mets are going to land Theo Gillen, but I'm maybe delusional enough to think that they might land Brody Hopkins. I thought there was a chance, right? I was like, all right, maybe that's where this goes. Maybe they get a prospect that's just outside top 100s. Maybe they get Caden Bodine, who anyone who's listened to the show for the past 2 weeks knows I've really been intrigued by the Rays catching prospect who is tearing the cover off the ball this season. I'm thinking maybe they get Ty Johnson or Michael Ferret, a couple starting pitching prospects in AAA who have a lot of upside. I was really excited about what the Mets are going to get in return for Freddy Peralta. Then we get the report of what the return is. A little less excited. A 3-for-1 trade. Now, the Mets might hit on these guys, but there's not a top 100 prospect in this trade. There's not a top 10 prospect in the Rays system in this trade. It's 3 prospects in the top 30. You're doing a quantity over quality approach in this deal, and I do not like that. I would have rather the Mets done a 1-for-1 and gotten the best possible prospect than getting 3 guys. I really would have. But here's the return. Aiden Smith, a 22-year-old outfielder. Gill Hill, who is a pitcher in AA. I did not grab his age. Let me do that real quick. So Gill Hill, 21 years old. And then Emilien Pitre, who's 23 years old, at second baseman. That is a return. 3 prospects for Freddy Peralta. Now, Aiden Smith was the highest ranked prospect according to Pipeline at number 15, but his numbers are brutal. This is a guy who is ranked so high because he, is a strong defender. He's a quick runner, good athlete, but you look at the numbers, guy hasn't hit very much. He was also a 4th-round pick by the Mariners back in 2023. This season, he's got a 672 OPS. He's batting .209 with a .281 on base percentage, .391 slugging percentage. You could say, oh, there's a little bit of power there. He's hit 10 home runs this season. He had 14 home runs last season. Stole 41 bags last season. This year, he's got 16. But you're talking about a lot of strikeouts, not a lot of walks, not a lot of contact. I can't get excited about Aiden Smith if you're telling me he's the headliner. I'm sorry. I'm just not that thrilled with it. Now, again, I have to try to put the context back in my mind that Freddy Peralta has been awful this year. So my expectations that got raised when I heard the ask of a top 100 prospect, and then I see the team that he's traded to, maybe my expectations were unreasonable. And if you frame it in the Mets just traded a rental starting pitcher with an ERA over 5 or at 5 for 3 prospects in the top 30 of his system, yeah, it's pretty good. But again, I was excited for that one piece they get back, and I just don't see that in this deal. It's an okay package. The other 2 guys, I'm actually more excited about the other 2 guys, I think, than the supposed headliner of Aiden Smith. So you have Gill Hill, which, it is a fun name to say, right? Gill Hill, you got to give him that. Number 26, according to Pipeline, in the race system. Also, we should not overreact to Pipeline's ranking of prospects. Because, for one, there's a million outlets that'll tell you a million different things. And 2, these lists, when exactly have they updated them all? How much did they labor over the decisions at the end of a top 30? I wouldn't get too carried away by that side of it. But the other two pieces, again, Gill Hill has made 15 starts this year in Double-A, made 20 starts overall. So he is a healthy pitching prospect that's in the upper minors in Double-A. A 4.43 ERA, 4-pitch mix. He's a guy that can get up to 97 with his fastball. You might think will be able to stick around as a starting pitcher. Maybe it's a back-end arm, but it is a starting pitching prospect that slots into your Double-A rotation. That's not nothing. That's still a good piece to add, and I'm sure he'll probably be ranked higher in the Met system than he was in the Rays system. The final piece is actually the one that intrigues me the most. That's Emilien Pitre, number 27, according to Pipeline. Second baseman who has an 885 OPS on the season between high A and Double-A, 32 stolen bases. He was a second-round pick by the Rays back in 2024. Looking at a guy that has good speed, really good contact ability, not much power, but he is a good runner. So a guy that could potentially fill the void for the New York Mets at second base. Again, he this year posted those numbers between high A and Double-A. So you're talking about a prospect that can slot into the Mets system in Double-A, where you have Mitch Voit right now. And again, really good numbers. Particularly, his numbers even ticked up once he got to Double-A. In 37 games in Double-A, he's been 323 with a 451 on base, a 492 slugging percentage. He has this season 11 stolen bases in Double-A. Again, 21 in high A, so 32 on the season. That's the piece that I like the most in this deal. And overall, again, when you remind yourself that Freddy Peralta has an ERA of 5 this season, okay, you can start to come around to the notion that this is an okay deal. But again, when I was thinking about the highest of upsides, in return for Freddy Peralta, when you're dreaming of a top 100 prospect coming back the other way, this just doesn't feel as good. Now, granted, we never know what these guys are going to be. And I hope that the Mets hit here. You never know. Gill Hill could be in the Mets rotation next year, and Emilien Pitre could absolutely rise up the ranks and be a very highly touted prospect for the Mets. As far as stats go, I mean, he's having a better season than a lot of the top prospects the Mets have when it comes to the position player front. I just am a little disappointed that didn't get that one prospect that we go, oh, wow. Like, that was the big piece in this deal. That's the guy that really changes things for the New York Mets. They got a decent return here. Now, we also, apparently, according to those watching the Mets game, I was not watching. Apparently, Huascar Brazoban's on hug watch. So that's interesting. Brazoban could be getting dealt. You still could trade Luke Weaver. You still have Clay Holmes. Does not mean the New York Mets are done, and this is all the return that they're going to get. They got the 2 prospects for AJ Minter, the 3 prospects for Freddy Peralta. That's it. There's still plenty more. There are still plenty more trades to be made here. And so I don't want to overreact and get too upset about one return. I just saw the Rays system and Freddy Peralta go in there, and I got excited. And I thought that one of these other prospects that we spent so much time on the show focused on, whether it is, again, Brody Hopkins, whether it was Michael Ferret, Ty Johnson. I mean, those, if they had gotten one, if you could have gotten one of those 3 arms and just gotten that arm, and it's a 1-for-1 trade, I think I'm more in on that compared to this. So what was the result here of Freddy Peralta's tenure with the New York Mets? We're going to talk about that in the next segment, because the hype that came with Freddy Peralta was never realized. And now you look up at what the Freddy Peralta trade meant for the New York Mets over the past year. And I think this is where it starts to really hurt this deal. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's going to hit a home run today, FanDuel's giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. And if you're right, you're going to receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team, keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep, and now you get a chance to make your prediction before first pitch. Usually for me, all season long, my Daily Dingers pick was easy, and that was Juan Soto. Now, got to look other places, whether it's Francisco Lindor, if you're just looking at a matchup from another team. Play those matchups and make sure you make your pick each day because it's there for you each day. Are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a home run. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I believe we've hit our goal of 17,000 subscribers, so I guess 18,000's up next. Appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe, and also hit that notification bell. I'm still trying to see if Huascar Brazoban has gotten traded, but once we see anything and trades happen over these next 48 hours, I will be going live. So make sure you have the notification bell hit so you don't miss out on any of your Mets content. So, what is the net result of the Freddy Peralta era for the New York Mets? We know it's not good because right now, if you told me I could trade Aiden Miller? Sorry, it all happened so fast. Aiden Miller, Gill Hill, and I know Emilien Pitre. Yeah, Aiden Smith. Jeez, Aiden Miller's the prospect for the Phillies. My mind is getting twisted today. Aiden Miller, it would have been an amazing return for Freddy Peralta. Now, so Aiden Smith, Emilien Pitre, Gill Hill. If I could have traded those three prospects and maybe even throw in Billy Amick for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, I think I would do that. You got to remember here, you gave up 2 top 100 prospects and you get back 3 prospects in the Rays top 30 after Freddy Peralta helped create your season with a 4.99 ERA and 22 starts. The Freddy Peralta era in a Mets uniform was brutal. It was an absolute train wreck. You look back and it's, to me, there's some comps to Justin Verlander in the sense that it's getting these pitchers who have been unbelievable in baseball, and the result of the season is a disaster and nowhere near what you thought it would be. And that, of course, was the 2023 Mets comparable to the 2026 Mets. The difference, Justin Verlander, for one, pitched well in a Mets uniform, and 2, the Mets got back at the time Drew Gilbert, who was a top 100 prospect, I believe, and Ryan Clifford, who, if he wasn't then, he became one, and everyone was kind of expecting him to be one. So that return, where granted you ate a lot of money to make that trade happen, but you got a much better return for Justin Verlander a couple years ago than you got for Freddy Peralta. Now, granted, Drew Gilbert became Tyler Rogers, who was a rental in a lost season, and he hasn't been a very good big leaguer anyway, Drew Gilbert. And Ryan Clifford is having a disaster of a season and is starting to fall on top prospect lists and might not turn into anything. So what prospects are at that specific time, you never know what they're going to become. Jet Williams was a top 100 prospect and still is a top 100 prospect, but he might be a utility infielder. Luis Acuna was a top 100 prospect, and now he is looking like a utility infielder in the big leagues that might not ever break through offensively. That could be Jet Williams in 2 years. Brandon Sproat's got an ERA over 5. We really don't know how any of this is going to play out. We know right now it looks horrible because Brandon Sproat is still at least holding down a rotation spot, and on the Mets right now would be a very nice piece to have for your future, as there's nothing wrong with a controllable starting pitcher that can throw in the upper 90s. It's nice to have. I would have wished the Mets got that back in this trade. I guess granted Gill Hill might be better than I'm giving him credit for, but you know that this was a loss, a big loss when you're looking at what the Mets traded for Freddy Peralta and what they're now getting in return. And that was a losing proposition as soon as Peralta pitched to a 4.99 ERA. I guess where I let myself get carried away here is reading into the ask, which was a top 100 prospect for Freddy Peralta, which if you had gotten that prospect back, it's a completely different conversation. And then the fact that the market was good enough that the Mets decided to scratch him on Friday, the teams that were engaged, the lack of other options on the market. And I mean, here the Rays were obviously in the running for Skubal, and their pivot is Peralta, just like I said it would be on this morning show or last night's show when I did the live stream after the Skubal trade. I predicted that the Rays might get in on either Peralta or Holmes, and particularly Peralta. It felt like an ideal fit and ends up being an ideal fit for them. But I was expecting something better coming back in return. I just was. And if you had told me that the Mets had pulled off a 1-for-1 and Brody Hopkins was coming back or Ty Johnson was coming back, I'd say, you know what? Look, those are prospects that I could envision turning out to be a better big league starting pitcher than Brandon Sproat. And so in that sense, okay, I could kind of get my head around the return a little bit more. Yeah, you still give up Jet Williams in that sense for Tobias Myers. Horrible trade. But if you had gotten Brody Hopkins back, and Brody Hopkins is a better pitching prospect than Brandon Sproat, then all of a sudden I can at least talk myself into it. This is a tougher return to talk yourself into because Aiden Smith, based on the rankings, is the headliner, and he's just not having a very good season this year. So there's that side of this thing. Then there is the fact that the other two prospects are at the bottom end of a top 30. Again, we shouldn't get carried away by the rankings, but even the impact, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it once I have more time to sit on it. And once we see what the full picture of the Mets trade deadline is, we'll have a much better gauge on this one. For now, it's a return that I'm underwhelmed with. We just put a poll out on Twitter. So check us out at Locked On Mets. Are you happy with the return for Freddy Peralta? I'm putting no. And maybe I am way off base on this because the Mets get 3 prospects back for a guy that has a 5 ERA. And you can't say that enough. So I understand that Freddy Peralta's trade value is nowhere near where it was this offseason. I still would have preferred one awesome prospect to a 3-for-1. But you know what? Maybe Emilien Pitre is an awesome prospect. And maybe over the next year, he proves that to be the case. And the great season that he's having, he repeats it next year. He's up in AAA for the New York Mets. And he could be your second baseman of the future. And I can entirely eat my words. Gill Hill could turn out to be a part of the Mets rotation for the future. And again, I'll eat my words. Aiden Smith could turn into something. And again, I can eat my words. I just was hoping for one awesome prospect. I didn't care if they got 2 or 3 guys back. I just wanted the best possible prospect they can get in return for Freddy Peralta. And instead they get more of a collection of assets here. And it's just not the type of trade that I was hoping for. But there's a lot more moves to be made. And maybe Freddy Peralta was not the Mets' most valuable trade asset. You know, we didn't think he was going into the deadline. We thought that was going to be Luke Weaver. And I thought that Clay Holmes would be more valuable. So there's still those 2 trade chips to cash in. Apparently, Huascar Brazoban was getting some hugs. So we very well could be doing another trade, podcast today. We could be doing multiple ones today. So we're going to leave this video here and we'll wait for the next bomb to drop. We'll see what the next big news item is. Might be Brazoban, might be Holmes, might be Tyrone Taylor. You never know. I appreciate you all for tuning into this live stream, though. For all of you who will check out the playback, make sure you hit that subscribe button, as I mentioned, if you are watching on YouTube, and hit that notification bell so you know when I go live, if and when Huascar Brazoban gets traded today, amongst other moves that could go down. Again, I appreciate you all for tuning in. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network.